and the dark will be quite long, at least in my opinion.
Okay, use humor. Humor is a great weapon. As I said, no more knee-jerk reactions, but it's better to give people one good laugh than to give them a completely predictable piece of activist reaction 3 or 5 times. I personally very much like the Yes Men. I like Billionaires for Bush, camera pieces in front of surveillance camera, or theater pieces in front of surveillance cameras, ad busting, performance art, flash mobs, anything that is unexpected, that sort of makes people trip over their own minds.
And so we need to make the people on the other side of the camera feel bad. So they need to be embarrassed because they are peeping Toms. They are the ones that spy on others. This is immoral what they're doing. We need to get them off that feeling that they are the good guys, because they aren't. So and we need to laugh about them, because it's a sick hobby to listen to other people's phone calls. And so actually it's not really something that you can be proud of. And this is something that we need to get into society. Being the peeping Tom at the surveillance equipment and developing such stuff must be embarrassing. It must be something that you really rather not feel good with, and you should not have the feeling that you're the hero of Homeland Security, but you should have the feeling that you're some creep in a hole somewhere that is doing something that nobody really wants to know about, and not something to be proud of. And this requires a cultural change. So it must not be cool any longer to have access to this data. It must be something, look at it, yeah, okay, you're dealing with that kind of garbage, so don't have too much time at your hands, haven't you? And so having fun with that is the most important thing of all, because it can be quite depressing, as we have seen in the first part, but you also can have a lot of fun with these people, because they know already that their job is most of the time extremely boring. So what do you think how much fun it is to stare 24 hours a week at some grainy monitor watching other people? What
computer?
Yeah, even if the computer looks at the camera and tries to analyze the phone records or whatever and the movement patterns, even then 90% of that what comes out is crap and boring and just people going on shopping or smoking a pipe or whatever. And one thing that we can have a lot of fun with is turning the surveillance around. So there are quite a number of people that very publicly say, okay, we need more surveillance, we need more security, we need more biometric identification and stuff like that. Actually, we happen to have quite a bit of technology knowledge to turn all this around. So let's expose them completely, expose them in public, publish everything we know about them, let them feel what it is about to be surveillanced. So turn it around, and this can be the most funny part of all. We can be creative about that, we can have a lot of fun with that, and that's something that we should focus on so that we make sure that they are not comfortable with their stuff anymore. So
there's another piece of activism that I personally don't see done that much, and that is to make sure that we don't lose time when our luck changes. They haven't lost any time when their luck changed, and we shouldn't be either. So people that, the type of activists that do lobbying, the type of activists that write legal proposals, should be writing law retractions, new laws, for when all of this shit starts backfiring on them. It's already beginning to backfire on them, and we need to be ready when it happens. We need to have legal proposals ready for our parliamentarians to vote upon pretty much the next day. They did, so we must do too.
So we need to have a plan B when it goes the other way around. So I just heard an interesting comment on the whole topic. It said, it might be that someday it will be looked upon like the McCarthy era, where hunting communists was cool for about 10 years. And after that, everybody was part of that hunt was looked upon like, you did that? And so it might be that we are lucky and the swing is only a few years in the future. And we need to be prepared for that day. So we also need to use their tactics if necessary. So usually how this works is they fire a test balloon that is an extreme proposal, like forbidding, let's put it the other way around. Let's say, okay, we demand that all telecommunications surveillance is ended tomorrow, or January 1st, to give them a few days to adapt. So it's completely illegal. Telecommunications surveillance will be something that is totally illegal. That's our proposal. And so then we maybe settle for, okay, let's give them 1 more year or something like that. So they did the same thing around. So they wanted complete DNA sequencing of everybody in a country. And what they got around with in the end was that they can basically get DNA traces from anybody at will. So they just need some probable cause or something that simulates a probable cause. So this is the tactic that they use. There are a few other things, and we need to use the same thing. We need to make impossible demands because they also do it, and they get away with that.
Just treat yourselves as the assistants to the prosecution in the great intelligence community inquiries of 2015.
Yeah. Also, what I see is that our media tactics is pussyfooting. We are basically too lame. We're saying it's a privacy violation. It's a data crime, nothing else. We need to name names. We need to be a bit more aggressive. We need to be able to name it as it is and not trying to be the nice-looking people that have some concerns or being named the watchdog that has some issues. So this is not what we need to do anymore. We need to be much more aggressive on that.
May I give you,
Mike's in a moment.
may I give you, just ask your opinion.
We'll be done in 3 or 4 minutes, and then we can do an audience participation.
Just have one question, right? How do you think the new government, the current government, will compare to the former government that had a seat in Berlin? The previous one, I mean, the East German for.
Later.
Can we do it later, please?
In about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing is they fucking up. They're having goofs every day. So we have this thing with, for instance, with the CIA trying to capture some guy in Italia, and in the end, this whole thing completely explodes in their face. They have now arrest warrants for, I don't know, 20 plus CIA agents, and B, the whole surveillance infrastructure is being exposed because the police in Italy has used it against the CIA. And so everything, like how do they analyze the traffic records, how did they match that with location data, how they traced it down to the hotels where these people were living, how they matched the telephone numbers to the US embassy, and so on and so on. They did everything by the book. So this is basically the perfect case for this kind of investigation. And it all fires in their face. And we need to use these fuck-ups. We need to use them to make our case. And we need to show that the laws that they are introducing to prevent us, to protect us from terrorism, are actually more dangerous than the terrorism itself. So, and that is the real issue here, convincing at least, if not the greater public, then the people who are thinking about these things and having at least some consciousness left to get them onto these issues. Yeah. Another thing is a lot of these contracts in the security industry are driven by personal greed. So there are a lot of people earning a lot of money on that, and almost all of it has some illegal angle on that. And as soon as something happens in this area, we need to also be on that and put that to journalists and make sure that it's exposed all over the place. So because a lot of that stuff simply doesn't make even sense, even if you would assume that the terrorism protection would be the real issue. Because of a lot of the security measures that are introduced are not even making security even a little bit better. So, Asimov?
Yeah. There's a whole chapter here, a little chapter that we call the Asimov Foundation Strategies. Let's assume for a moment that the intelligence apparatus is in fact turned against anybody that dissents with the government. Frank Church, I think he was a US senator who was investigating the intelligence community in 1975, over the COINTELPRO program that the FBI and the NSA had set up in the US to spy on its own population. Basically went into the intelligence community to find out what their capabilities were and came away looking slightly white in the face. And he said some interesting things. I think one of his quotes was that if this was ever turned on the American people, don't quote me on the exact words, but if this great machinery is ever turned on the American people in the event of any kind of dictatorship, there would be no chance of ever opposing it. And I think his 1975 predictions are upon us today. So given that this is possibly happening, given that this may even be happening to us, I've been speaking to some people from America that are saying that they're already noticing that this is upon them. They're noticing their friends getting arrested for obviously through telephone taps, much more widespread than they've ever seen, through traffic analysis. If this is upon us, we may want to develop actual strategies to make sure that our knowledge and our experience can transcend the current carriers of it, can transcend us, actively recruit new people into our own culture, which is what we've been doing all along. Make sure we transfer this knowledge and the experience, write it down, master apprentice structures, which also function if people get arrested, if people get interrogated. Basically, prepare for situations that may not be as friendly as the world that we live in today.
Yeah, so that is basically the message, is that we may have a few months or years left preparing for the worst. It might not happen if we are lucky, but I doubt that we are lucky. So we really need to think about what we are doing now, how things must change, what roads of action we need to pursue, and what battles are worth fighting for that we can win and have fun with. So because if you think for the long run, you're only doing stuff for quite a while if it makes fun. If it's getting boring, dangerous, and it's not even the last bit funny, then you stop doing it. And so we need to keep this fun factor always in mind. I think that was it from us.
Yeah, that was it from us, sort of. Let's go to a couple of questions from the audience.
I have one question for you that I just want to have you raise your heads. So who of you believes that we can turn things around, that it will be, let's say, as good as 1997 again? Okay, at least a few. Thanks. Not entirely hopeless.
Okay, let's first do the question that's already asked. What do we think of the present government as opposed to the last one here in Berlin? I think it's quite obvious things are not getting any better.
Yeah,
I was comparing it with, well, there are two previous governments in Berlin. I mean, the East German and the one before that. That's the fascist government. How would current government compare with those?
Oh, I think a lot of the technology that we have today is Erich Honecker and Mielke's wet dream. They were They were laughed at when they were registering all the typewriters. People were laughing. How can they dare to register all the typewriters? Because they wanted to look at a piece of paper and see who typed it. Every printer today prints its serial number, and the Dutch police is already saying, we're using that successfully to get to the buyer of a specific printer every time. And nobody's laughing.
So in terms of technology, certainly things have advanced a lot. In terms of politics, it's difficult to say. At least we can sit here and say what we think, which we couldn't do in the previous two governments. So well, that's in
the 30s of previous century. In the 30s of the previous century, you could still say what you want in Berlin, but then came the fire in the Reichstag.
Yes, so but
comparable with something that happened in New York.
I think it really doesn't really bring us forward comparing that. So I think
it may be.
Let's go to some other questions, because I don't want this to be a debate between you and us here.
Maybe let's go on with further questions.
Go ahead over there.
Well, okay. Regarding your question of hope, if there's still some hope left, I might just have some kind of a remark. The thing is, I have a problem with the title of this talk that says that we have lost the war. I mean, I realize Yeah, I realize we have lost a couple of battles, as you say that as well.